Well, Sam, thank you for coming on the pod.
Thank you for having me.
No, of course. We always like to kick off with a bit about you and your journey. So yeah, would love to know a bit about that.
Oh gosh, how much time do you have? Where do I start?
Enough.
Okay, so I am Sam. I am the co-founder of Belong, which is a wealth platform. In terms of my journey, I'm originally from South Africa, as you'll be able to hear from the accent. So born and bred in Johannesburg. My background is in economics. So I did my master's in applied economics, and it was while I was doing my master's that I was first exposed to behavioral economics, which, as many will know, is the intersection of psychology and economics. And I just completely fell in love with it, as geeky as that sounds. There were two really key things for me. The one was that it showed me that you can take human behavior and put it into a mathematical equation. Mm-hmm. So human behavior, which to date had felt pretty random to me, up until that point in my life, that people just, I don't know, you're born as you are and you have a personality and that's how you behave. And then with behavioral economics, it was kind of like, actually, that's not the case. There are these tenets of behavior, and there are these X variables that add up to a Y variable. And if you can change the X variables, you can change the Y variable.
So do you view psychology like as a formula almost then? Okay.
Yeah. Which was like a massive unlock for me. And then the second thing was my research while I was doing my master's was looking at the determinants of gambling addiction amongst the poorest households in South Africa. And what I was essentially doing was my Y variable was gambling addiction, and there were all the X variables. And I could see that if we could change those X variables, we can therefore influence one's propensity to have an addiction to gambling.
Excuse my ignorance, but is gambling quite prevalent, especially in low-income households?
Especially in low-income households. Unsurprisingly, one of the X variables is income. And these are people that were literally earning less than £1 a day, and everything they were earning, they were gambling away. And just the level of irrationality that I was witnessing with these people, the way they were behaving with their money, coming from 6 years of doing economics, where it had been drilled into me that people are perfectly rational, perfectly self-interested. When price goes up, demand goes down. It was all of a sudden like, actually, no, that's not really
underpins all economic theory that in reality you can't actually apply.
Doesn't hold.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'd witnessed magic in a lot of ways as I started digging more and more into behavioral economics. And now, even when I speak about behavioral economics, I always say I feel like I'm showing people a magic trick, because it's kind of like it's taken everything. Like, we've got entire like industries built on these assumptions of how economic actors behave, and we know that they're flawed, but they're flawed in these perfect, predictable ways. We're all flawed in the same way. So it was at that point that I decided I'd dedicate my career to helping people make better decisions, specifically with their money.
When you say flawed in the same way, I have to ask what the flaw is that you see.
So flawed in the same way in that we, instead of being perfectly rational, we're almost perfectly irrational in that we're irrational, but in these predictable ways. So it's not like random irrationality.
Yeah, okay.
And so I decided I wanted to use all that I had learned and was still continuing to learn to really help people make better decisions, starting with those people that I'd been doing my research with. And so I finished my master's. I went into consulting and joined what was at the time the first team of behavioral specialists in Africa. I worked with them for about 6 years. I joined when there were like 3 or 4 people. So really working at the forefront of the science on the continent. There was no one else doing applied behavioral science in Africa. And given my interest in the way that people behave with money, I worked in financial services. So I worked with all the big banks, insurance companies, investment companies on how to embed this behavioral thinking into their products.
With the focus on like behavior like gambling, for example, or like a broad? Okay.
So generally the way people were behaving with their money. Specifically, I did focus on long-term financial decision making. So a lot of work in like pensions, saving and investment, in insurance. I was particularly interested in the way people behave over the long term and make those long-term decisions. But yeah, just generally, and across like the income spectrum. So from very low income clients at the banks to very high income, the ultra high net worths. And best believe that across the spectrum, you see those irrational decisions.
And is that from your time there the same kind of globally or in certain regions, or how did you look internationally when you were doing that as well?
Yeah, so my work focused in South Africa and Africa to start, and then I started doing a lot of work across Europe, specifically in Eastern Europe. But we know that this holds across. My specific experience was in Africa and Europe, but we know that it holds.
Okay.
Yeah,
and so moving to now, did you go from there to Belong, or was there a...
Oh, no, there was an in-between.
Okay.
So I guess I became disillusioned with these big banks, and I felt like, I often say I was putting lipstick on a pig, in that there were these old legacy products that were built like decades ago that were being sold to clients, and we were just putting on this nice shiny layer of behavioral thinking on top, just in the way it was being packaged or delivered to the customer or communicated to the customer. And so I firmly believed that we should be building with this thinking, seeing how powerful it was when we were just doing that shiny little layer on top. The impact we were having was enormous, to the extent that we were called in to build internal behavioral teams in these banks. So that's what, towards the end of my consulting career, that's what I was doing. I was helping the banks build their own internal functions on behavioral science. And that's the impact we were having. And I was like, what if we actually built products or businesses with this at the ground level? Like first principles, behavioral economics. And so that's why I left consulting. I wanted to do that. I decided to do my MBA. So that's how I got to the UK. Moved to the UK, I went to London Business School, and it was while I was at business school that I was introduced to my co-founder. Okay. And the rest is history.
Was she also studying, or?
No, she actually wasn't. She's just an absolute powerhouse. Quickly on her, because it is relevant. She grew up in the Caribbean. She went to the US to studied finance. So she's hardcore finance, went into investment banking, went to GSB, so did her MBA at Stanford, then went back into investment banking, went into fintech investment banking, and then ended up in a payments company called Clover. And she launched and scaled it across the US, and then she'd been moved to the UK to scale across Europe, and she was busy doing that.
So where did you actually meet?
We actually met on Zoom because it was COVID.
Okay.
COVID love story.
Were you actively looking for co-founders at the time?
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
I don't want to guess like how you met on Zoom, but I'll leave that.
So no, I wasn't. Honestly, in a lot of ways, I feel like I was an MBA student and I woke up and I was a founder. I wasn't looking for this at all. And how we met was one of my lecturers at London Business School was the founder of Nutmeg. His name's Nick Hungerford. And we were doing a Nutmeg case study. And at the end of his lecture, he said, he just had, probably just in passing very flippantly, but it stuck with me and has stuck with me all these years. He said, the future of wealth is behavioral. And you have to have an appreciation for how people behave in order to win at whoever wins this wealth game will have an understanding of how people behave. And so I reached out to him and I started chatting to him, and he mentored me through my MBA, and he was helping me to find a job in fintech because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into an early stage and be building with, as I said, behavioral economics at the core. And eventually he was like, I don't think you should join a fintech. I think you should start one.
Oh, really?
And I've got someone to introduce you to. And they'd gone to Stanford together. So they'd been friends for years, Nick and Avion, my co-founder. And so he put us together.
Okay. And what was that like meeting on Zoom? Did you hit it off straight away, or did it take a bit of time to build that trust and kind of co-founder relationship?
We totally hit it off straight away. And in the early days, Nick, so it was me, Avion, Nick, and one other guy who's still an advisor to the business, and we were just brainstorming.
Okay. Also, Nick joined.
Yeah, more just in a mentor capacity, because he had put us together because he said we were speaking to him about the same thing but using different language. I was using behavioral language. She was using more financial language, but we were talking about the same underlying problem.
Okay.
And so
where did she experience, even coming from that financial background, the same world view, I guess, that you had?
Yeah,
because it makes sense, but for her being in investment banking, it's a completely different lens.
Completely different. And for her, I mean, I'm sure she'll forgive me for speaking on her behalf. But for her, it was, she'd seen how wealth is made and how it compounds, how like massive wealth is made and how it compounds, and kind of what the tricks in the system are. In particular, she spent time in leveraged investment banking, so she understood the role that leverage plays in compounding wealth. And really, she came to the table with her, like, if we thinking about like her core view, if my core view was that the way we behave with our money is flawed and we're irrational in these predictable ways, especially when it comes to like, it's very like present bias and making decisions for the future.
Or loss aversion or something like that.
Exactly. She came with what she calls the paradox of wealth. And that's, to build wealth, you need time and money, because money needs time to compound. But the challenge is that unless you come from wealth, you probably don't experience those two things simultaneously, because when you're young, you've got all this time ahead of you. You and I will never have more time ahead of us than we do right now. But we feel like we don't have enough capital to invest. We haven't amassed the capital. When I invest, I want it to be a meaningful amount. And so we sit on the sidelines and we save our money and sit in cash. And then when we get to a point where we're like, okay, I've got enough to now invest, we run out of time and we don't have the time. So we've got the money, but not the time. So she's always been really passionate about how we can somehow correct that paradox.
It's quite interesting that, the two different lenses, and that you were kind of dealing with lower socioeconomic circles, and she was dealing with like the upper end of leverage shares and investment banking. And you probably, I assume, led to a middle ground of like an understanding of where you want to take your baby at that point, your company at that point, before it become Belong. So what did that then look like, that process of forming the idea and growing from there?
So the first thing we did, there was, and I can't remember the moment exactly, but there was a point in our conversations of kind of, well, I'll start with the problem that we're looking to solve. The problem we were looking to solve is that this generation, let's say the millennial generation, is the first generation set to be less well off than our parents financially. I mean, we've heard that. It's in the headlines. Everyone knows it. But we're the most educated, we're the highest earning. There's a hell of a lot of access on ways to build wealth. We've seen costs come down, but still there's 300 billion of excess cash sitting in the UK economy earning 0% interest. A lot of it, which is sitting with this core millennial generation and the younger Gen Xs and the older Gen Zs. So that was the problem that we started unpicking. And
when you say, sitting idle, just like in bank accounts, just like
cash,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that 300 billion is earning 0% interest.
Is that purely like 300 billion cash just sitting around? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot more that's probably earning interest. So that was the problem we were unpicking. And the moment that there was this moment, and I can't remember where it was, where we realized that you've heard my background. You've heard a bit about my co-founder's background. I was not investing. I'd saved a lot of money in consulting, and it was sitting back home in my South African bank account in cash, being chipped away by inflation. And I knew that. I understood. I'm an economist. Of course, I understand.
You're rational.
Yeah, I'm perfectly rational. I understand other people's irrationalities. And my co-founder, she doesn't have a pension. And we were kind of like, there must be more people like us because we know better. I've probably told people how to invest, but I'm not doing it myself. And so the very first thing we did was go out, and as I said, I was doing my MBA. So we went and started speaking to my classmates. I had 500 of our target customer at my fingertips, and we started talking to them. And I must have done about 300 behavioral interviews.
Were they thinking about like the mum test, for example? Were they like structured, kind of, these are the questions I want to ask, or was it sort of informal, like you just at the lecture hall and kind of, oh, but like, do you invest?
Oh no, it was proper mom test.
Even before you kind of set on an idea, you were just testing
anything,
this. Okay, interesting.
So we didn't do the 300 all at once. So I did a lot to kind of start to unpick it. Then we came up with the idea, and then we did more where we'd kind of show a demo of the idea that we'd come up with.
Did you have like any sense of the idea when you were doing those early conversations?
We did. We did. Because the things that we'd kind of come to the table with ideas ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'd come with almost like these tenets of what I knew needed to be solved from a behavioral perspective. So the very first one being that I mentioned it earlier, present bias. If I said you can have £100 today or £1,000 tomorrow, you'll probably take £1,000 tomorrow. If I said you can have £100 today or £1,000 in 5 years, a lot of people maybe will wait for 5 years. If I said you can have but a lot of people are taking the £100. If I said you can have £100 today or £1,000 in 10 years, everyone's taking the £100 today. And that's the decision to invest. Do you want £100 today or do you want £1,000 in 10 years' time? And so whatever product we built needed to address that. It needed to address the inherent delayed gratification in long-term investing. And at the time, there was a lot going on with meme stocks and NFTs and a lot of instant gratification.
When would this been 2020 then, 2021?
2021,
okay.
And yeah, so another thing that I came to the table with, whatever we build, it has to cut through like the decision fatigue out there. People don't want to choose from like 500,000 stocks. Like, let's just give them a handful, guide their decision making more. So there were some things that I knew for a fact that the product had to do, and I was looking to confirm those hypotheses. And then Avion was coming with this leverage idea and how, we spoke about that paradox of wealth, and historically an amazing way in which that has been solved is with a mortgage. Because a mortgage is a great way to get capital while you're young and you've got all the time ahead of you. You borrow money to invest in an appreciating asset that you cannot yet afford, and that compounds with your time. You repay the loan, the asset's growing faster than the cost of the loan.
And you can actually use the asset.
And you can use the asset, And so we had kind of the idea, there was a lot going on kind of in the social media space around good debt, why does Beyonce have a mortgage, things like that popping up. So so the emergence kind of Avion's idea with this paradox of wealth, a mortgage, good debt, how we can start to build on that, and my ideas with like behaviorally what the product needs to do. We had some strong hypotheses going in.
Okay. So tell me about Belong. Tell me about the product. What is it?
Okay, so essentially it is a wealth building platform, a long-term wealth building platform. Belong. It's delivered via an app that you download onto your phone, and when you come on, you make 4 decisions. How much would you like to invest? Minimum £500. It needs to feel meaningful. Which of these 5 index tracking funds would you like to invest in? It's very boring Warren Buffett approach to investing. Buy the market and hold it. So you can choose from 5 index funds. You can really see the decision fatigue minimized. It's, would you like to contribute regularly, build up a habit? So that's the 3rd decision. And the 4th decision is, would you like to take out a boost loan? And the boost loan is really our flagship feature. It's the thing that gets our customers excited and it got our early investors excited. And how it works is, it's essentially, we've taken the structure of a mortgage and we've replaced the underlying asset, being a property, with a diversified portfolio of stocks. So practically how it works is, let's say you want to invest £1,000, come onto the platform, you invest your £1,000, you can then apply for another £1,000 in a boost loan. So we'll up to double whatever you bring to the platform. So you now have £2,000 invested, and then you repay the £1,000 that you borrowed out of your pocket. So it operates very similarly to a mortgage.
How does that, and again, excuse my ignorance, but how does that work practically in terms of, on your side, getting the boost funding, getting the matching funding for the initial investment?
Yeah, so we go and raise debt.
Okay.
So really what we've built is an end-to-end, fully compliant lending and investing platform.
Okay. And what, as in, like practically, how did you come up with the mechanics behind that? Did you seek advice, or was it yourselves that kind of knew how to do it from your experience? Like, what was the...
No, definitely not on the technical side. Neither of us are technical.
Yeah, okay. Understood. What's the next thing that you did?
Okay, so following the research A key thing is that as part of that second wave of research, what we did was we kind of mocked up. This wasn't the kind of product that you could kind of like move fast and break things at all. So our ability to apply lean methodology was limited to some extent. We weren't going to like quickly whip up a prototype and put it out in the market.
Just because it was so different and complex to do.
It's different. Yeah. It's complex to it's expensive to build, and we knew that what we put out had to be something that people could trust from day one. It couldn't be out there breaking. So we spent a lot of time making sure that the product we put out did the proposition justice.
Okay.
But what we did do was we built an Excel sheet that essentially simulated what I just described to you, and people could see like if I invest this amount and I get a boost loan of this amount at this interest rate and this return on the market, that's what it'll look like over time.
Okay.
And so I tested that with a whole bunch of my classmates, and the feedback was just overwhelming. Like some group of people, like half of the people being like, I want, like, take my money, I want that now. And the other half of people being like, I try to do that.
Yeah.
Like I try to hack that.
Okay.
And I have a 0% credit card and I maxed out my credit card and invested in the S&P 500, or I did that with my student loan, or I went to the bank and tried to get a personal loan to invest in the market in the S&P 500, but I just couldn't get a loan at a low enough interest rate.
So the unlock there was either I didn't know this thing, I could do this, or I tried to do this, but it was just like so difficult to actually practically. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So with that, we were like, okay, this thing needs to exist. The next thing is we started talking to industry professionals because we were kind of like, why hasn't this been done before? This is like a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly.
We back tested it like 100 years. Or at the time it was more like 80 years. And we're like the way it would have performed was unbelievable. Like outperforms obviously just putting your money in cash. In a lot of cases, outperforms putting your money in cash. Dollar cost averaging outperforms like doing it on a mortgage in more recent years. Like we're like, this is a no-brainer. And so we started speaking to like the heads of all the big banks.
Okay.
And we started speaking to heads of banks, and we also started speaking to later stage VC funds, just to kind of be like, what are we missing? And again, the feedback was just like, this thing needs to exist. You should build this.
Is there internationally people trying to do this, or just hadn't been done at all?
It had not been done at all.
It's quite rare to find, like, especially in, I feel like, consumer finance, and that's truly differentiated like that. Yeah.
There is, I want to say it was a Yale professor.
Okay.
Two Yale professors that wrote a paper on this in like 2008, this exact concept. But that's as far as it went.
Okay.
Just wrote a paper on like
probably because at the time it was written.
Time diversification. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Time diversification and like the power of taking leverage when you're younger. So like kind of like flavors of this. But when we started, like, there was nothing like this. And since then we've spoken to thousands of people across the world. And for the first time earlier this year, we heard of one company in the US that's like an early stage company that's doing something similar.
Okay. So where were we? So you did the Excel spreadsheet, start speaking to industry professionals,
later stage VCs,
realize this is live. So then you have to actually action it. And I include within that, I assume it's quite a complex financial product. There's going to be regulation. There's going to be additional hurdles we have to overcome. We need to get funding for all of this. How did you kind of map out that, I guess?
Well, so we mapped out all the things that we needed to do and realized that we needed to fundraise because, as I said earlier, it was an expensive build out. So we went and we raised our pre-seed. So that was kind of the first thing we did.
Was it the largest pre-seed raised by female founders, right?
Yes, in Europe.
Congrats.
For a tech company.
For a tech company.
Yeah. And so we raised the pre-seed, and off the back of that, we then started the build out. But when we raised the pre-seed, it was just me and Avion and our pitch deck and a lot of passion.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did was we had engineering advisors. So we had two amazing engineering advisors that we brought on board just before we started fundraising. just to start mapping things out and to support in the fundraise because neither of us are technical. And then, so one was ex-Stripe, one was ex-Nutmeg, so the founding CTO of Nutmeg. And then the first thing we did was The first thing we did was hire a head of engineering.
Okay.
So we got a head of engineering, we got a head of compliance, we got...
So they were the first two hires on the tech side and then the compliance side?
Tech side, we brought in an ops guy and then compliance.
Okay. So naturally, talk to me a little bit about the compliance side of things.
Yeah.
I suppose, why did you need a head of compliance that early on? And then what were they mainly doing and have been doing up to this point?
Yeah, so we needed a compliance person early on for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a highly regulated business. We knew that. And we wanted to make sure that we were getting the fundamentals right. Before we wrote a single line of code, we wanted to make sure that, it was all in order. So that's why we brought them on. And we are currently an appointed representative. And so our head of compliance very much is the go-to person in terms of dealing with our principal.
And so those fundamentals, what did that include? Like engagement with the regulators? Talk to me a little bit about that. Everything. Engagement with the regulator, setting up risk frameworks, the way the product itself, the financial promotions in the product, the way that the product is structured, on the back end. It must have been. I mean, I don't know the background of your head of compliance, but it's quite a different. It's a completely different product. Like you say, it's a differentiated company. It's nothing quite out like that out in the market.
Yeah.
So for that person, it must have been interesting trying to lay down frameworks, which probably comes from a completely different world and different product.
Totally. Yeah. And that's actually something we've experienced throughout building this business, is that the financial services industry is very much bifurcated with lending and investing. So when we brought on our head of engineering, it wasn't like we could find someone who had built in a lending fintech and in a wealth management fintech. So our head of engineering's background was in wealth.
Yeah. Okay.
But then our head of compliance, we weren't going to find someone who had done both the investing side and the lending side. So we kind of looked at it and said, okay, well, which one do we think is like a bit more, like which one's more vanilla, which one's a bit more complex, given the way that we structured the product? Probably the lending side. So we brought someone with a lending lean or credit lean who could then upskill on the investment side.
Okay.
So it's been this whole journey, like lawyers, consultants, advisors, everyone. They're either on the credit or the lending side, or they're on the wealth/investing side.
Okay, so there's no, both from the tech side and the compliance side, kind of
across our business.
Really interesting. And there's just a lack of talent, basically bridging that. Okay, so essentially people at your company now will be learning both. So that's quite a unique talent pool.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do you want to become directly authorized? What does that help do for you?
Well, I think the one thing is that being appointed representative is very expensive.
Yeah.
So there's a cost associated with it that you pay to the principal. And also, I think there's a lot of value in dealing directly with the regulator and building like arm in arm with the regulator. We're very fortunate that we have a regulator that's pro-innovation, that is literally shouting about the same problem that we're out there looking to solve. So we think that, the value there compounds.
It's interesting. It's the same with us. We have a lot of engagement with regulators, and for the whole, especially in the UK, they're very front-footed and trying to understand what's going on with the sandboxes or whatnot. So that engagement with the regulator, I assume it's an important kind of principle within how you scale Belong.
Yeah, totally. How we scale Belong in this country and also around the world. Okay.
Talk to me on the flip side then on growth and marketing. How did the initial kind of launch or soft launches go, or beta testing? How did you sort of think about that and plan that?
Yeah. So we started out with, we really wanted to be customer first. And I think a lot of businesses say that, and it's quite difficult to, like, every founder's like, I'm going to be customer first. And when we were kind of like, okay, we want to be customer first, what does that actually mean? It's quite difficult to distill that, especially in those very early days where it's very much founder led.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point do we bring the customers in on the journey? So we were like, today. So as soon as we closed our pre-seed, brought in our early hires, the next thing we did was we set up what we called a customer advisory board.
Okay.
And it was everyone in the team could choose one person. That person got a +1, that person got a +1. So it was kind of like 2 or 3 degrees of separation from us. We had a group of, in the end, 30 people. And every product decision we made, branding decision we made, anything that touched the customer, we'd run it by our customer advisory board. So throughout our build, so the first year of building, we had this customer advisory board. We then, once we had an alpha version of the app ready, we ran an alpha. And that was with staff and family.
Okay.
And then we were ready to launch in October of 2023.
Okay.
We had run our alpha. It was a great success. And we're like, okay, let's go to market.
Mm-hmm.
And I kid you not, I want to say it was the day before our press release was going to go out. At this point, we hadn't even announced our fundraise, nothing.
So we were still
100% in stealth. So we're going to come out, announce the fundraise, announce the business, and the Queen dies.
Ah.
I know, bless her soul.
Yeah.
And
timing there.
Yeah, timing. And so our PR agency was like 12 days of mourning or whatever it was, like nothing, like everything's cancelled.
Yeah, I'm no PR expert. That's probably not a good time to launch. Yeah.
So we were like, okay, 12 days is fine. We can do that. It was 12 days in like a decade of building. And so the 12 days go by, and I can't remember exactly the timing, but at some point just after those 12 days, Liz Truss came in. The economy shifted. Interest rates went up. And it just didn't seem like the right time to be launching a very innovative new lending product.
Okay, so you paused launch, this stuff happened, and then when did you decide it's
So
now's
then
the
we
right
were kind
time?
of like, how do we turn this lemon into lemonade? So we decided to run a beta instead.
Okay.
So we still did like a little mini launch. We went back to our customer advisory board. We invited all of them to join. They all got a +1 and a +1, and we ran this beta for a year. And in a lot of ways, that was a blessing in disguise. It meant that we could test our product in a higher interest rate environment and prove that it worked, prove that people are joining, taking out the boost loan, they're making their repayments, they're bringing more money to the platform, all the behaviors we were trying to drive. So we did that for a year, and then at the beginning of 2024, we then came out and announced the business, and that's when we announced our pre-seed, which had happened 2 years earlier.
Nice. Yeah. So that launch, obviously you had the customer advisory board still kind of in stealth still, but I suppose when you then launch, it's like, now we want distribution.
Yeah.
So did the pre-seed round help with that distribution, or how did you think about that?
What do you mean, did the pre-seed round?
So like announcing the pre-seed round at the same time of the launch.
Oh, yes.
Was that like a major growth lever, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally. Okay. That was part of the strategy.
Okay.
Was to create as much buzz as possible. And we were very fortunate that the press picked it up. So we announced that we launched our wait list, so people could then join the wait list. And then at the end of last year, we started onboarding people off the wait list, or we took the wait list away.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where are you at now then? If we look at launch at the beginning of the year, you said
at the beginning of last year we announced the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we took away the wait list at the end of last year.
Okay.
And
what drove that decision to take away the wait list?
Oh, we're just like people wanted to join our platform.
And you felt the product was in a good spot to be like, right?
The product was in a good spot. It was in a really good place, and we're just like, we might as well just let it, like everyone that's on the wait list on. And now it's really about growth and scaling.
So what does that look like the next few years? Like, what's the growth plan?
World domination.
Yeah.
So we're a direct consumer business. We've put a lot of work into our brand, how it looks, how it feels, how it makes people feel. We know that we wanted to fit into people's lifestyle. There's a real lifestyle feel to it. So you'll see if you go onto our Instagram at Belong Wealth, if you go onto our website, b-long.co, you just, it's got a different energy. And that's very much by design. So it's a direct consumer business, and we so far have acquired people pretty much purely by word of mouth.
Okay.
So it's a lot of referrals, like little customer events that we've run, social media. We've gone viral a bunch of times on Instagram and on TikTok.
With what sort of content? What's worked?
A few things. One campaign in particular, which is my favorite campaign. It's called How to Sound Smart at the Dinner Table.
Also my favorite campaign.
Thank you. And that's based on the insight that everyone actually just wants to sound smart at the dinner table. And every Friday we drop an interesting story that you can go and tell that weekend, like over drinks or whatever, to make it to sound smart.
Okay.
And there's always, not always, I'd say in like 80% of the stories, there's a financial lesson. So the power in the campaign is that it's kind of financial literacy, but it's being delivered via storytelling.
Okay.
So for example, the one story is why it's called a bull or a bear market. Or the time Warren Buffett beat the hedge fund guy that the S&P 500 would outperform a portfolio of hedge funds, and like the bet was $1 million or whatever. Yeah.
So with that bull v bear market one, or the Warren Buffett one, who, like, you just sit down and brainstorm, right, what's going to go viral? Like, how do you actually come up with those?
We tried that. Yeah. That didn't work, surprisingly.
Yeah.
We asked ChatGPT what's most likely to go viral.
Give me 5, yeah.
That also didn't work. The thing that has worked, and I kid you not, everyone that has gone viral has come from the same place. It's something that someone in the team has actually heard being told by someone else.
Okay.
So, for example, there's one that is, it's about the Michelin Guide and like how the tire company ended up with like making a restaurant guide.
That's my only story at dinner. So like if that's been taken now, that's
we
viral.
got so many more for you. We got so many more. Go look. And that, I mean, a friend of mine told me that over breakfast one day. And he was like, kind of like, don't quote me. You better like go check it, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So then I went and checked it, and there's one like on the origin story of paddle that was told to me by someone. The one that's just gone viral is on like why airlines send older airplanes to like the developing world. My co-founder, her husband heard that someone telling that story. So it's stories that we hear in the wild. So it makes sense that like they get passed on.
But taking a step back even further to have the idea for that concept of like cool story on a dinner table.
Sorry.
How did that come up? Like,
you know, so we had someone helping us with marketing at the time. Her name's Lucy, and I distinctly remember her coming up with the idea, but she always says that I came up with the idea. So we're not actually sure which one of us came up with the idea.
You're both too humble.
But initially, yeah, too humble. But initially it was meant to be an email campaign. It was actually just going to be like a one-liner in like a monthly newsletter of like, and here's your snippet on how to sound smart at the dinner table. And from there, we're like, oh, wow, people are loving this. It could actually be, like, we could put that on Instagram. And it was
so when an email first, how do you know people were like, oh, this is cool? Were they just
the feedback, yeah.
Okay.
And so then we were like, oh, we'll just do, every Friday we'll do an Instagram a story and just like outline the story that you can tell in a story. And then like people, we could see that like people were responding and like really engaging. We were like, like, okay, maybe we just make it a static post. And eventually, like, we should just film someone telling the story.
Yeah.
And that's by far been the most effective, yeah.
And then when you're looking at the actual metrics from going viral, can you see, like, exactly what that means for downloads and user acquisition and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned word of mouth, for example. How does that kind of stimulate that?
What do you mean?
So if you go viral, does that help people talk about you and then word of mouth? And
totally.
And how do you track that? Like,
well, it's difficult to track. It's very much on timing. And because we're still so early and we're not doing a lot, it's quite easy for us to see like when, like to tie something back to a specific event.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when we did a crowdfund earlier this year, and like obviously like growth exploded in that time. It was the only thing we did at the time, so we know that it was because of the crowdfund. So when things go viral on that specific day in a month or in that week, and then we see an uptick throughout the rest of the value chain, we're kind of like, okay, it was that thing going viral.
Got you.
But how it actually goes viral, they then come to our Instagram. They see all the other content on our Instagram page or our TikTok page. There's a link to download the app. There's a link to our website. So making sure that there's that follow through.
If you look across consumer fintechs, do you think content is how a business stands out? And because it's such a crowded, there's so many obviously investment platforms, but also different tools you can use for financial wealth and stuff. So do you think content is what, obviously having a great product, but initially in terms of eyeball attention, content helps?
Yeah.
All that
having
stuff.
A great product means nothing if there's no one to use it. If there's no eyeballs on it. So having a great product, that's table stakes.
Yeah.
You need people to come to it. And for us, we've found content is kind of our wedge into getting that attention, especially having limited marketing budget to date. So, coming into Belong, like in the early days when we were raising our pre-seed, people would be like, okay, and then are you going to do any financial education? And I was kind of like, oh, come on, like who needs more? Like these customers, they don't need financial education. These are like they're professional working people, like they snooze at financial education. And that's a hypothesis that I got wrong. People do want financial education. And whether it's financial education, financial literacy, financial enlightenment, empowerment, whatever we want to call it, people do want it. They want that content, but it needs to be delivered in a very specific way.
And how, I mean, that kind of borders into financial advice potentially. How do you, when you're creating that piece of content, like ensure that it's more, financial sort of, it's not advice, it's education. It's kind of an understanding. It's an interesting story. Like, how do you differentiate that? Because quite a blurry line.
Well, with products like AdCare.
Okay. Nice.
No, but seriously, it's, I think it requires deep understanding of the regulation, of the FinProm regulation. And we make sure that like everyone, not just people creating the content, everyone in our team understands that, because we've got everyone chipping in on like customer support. Customer support can also start to blur that line. And it's ensuring that we're never giving individual advice to a specific person on given their financial situation. It's kind of broad brush features and benefits. And facts.
Okay. I suppose that's what's different about running a financially regulated business is you have all that additional compliance around marketing, for example, or customer success or customer management, etc.
Because you see some things out, like a lot of content out there that is being delivered not by like an investment company, by literally just like an influencer or a company that only does financial education. And because they don't have those regulations, like the stuff that they say is like I'm like, damn.
What would be a piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring fintech founder, especially consumer-facing fintech founder?
I think there's two things, and it's advice that I received. One is you can't take the approach of just build it and they'll come. That doesn't work. You need to build it with them. And the other one is fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Sam, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.